Nick Loris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, European Union member states have agreed to reduce their gas usage by 15% by winter. How will this affect daily life in Europe?
Yeah, it's a big commitment from the EU nations, and there was a lot of balking at such a commitment in the past few days because what this means for Europeans is simply energy rationing, and that could mean difficult decisions by which the government forces shutoffs, forces businesses to close, and that could lead not only to difficult situations for households making sure that they have enough affordable, reliable energy, but also for businesses if they are really to stick to this 15% commitment. It's going to be challenging for some of these businesses to stay operating at full throttle. And so you could see some economic contraction as a result of such a decision. I think that's why there was so much skepticism about such a plan. It does show, on a positive note, some important steps of coordination with urgency among the European Union nations. And so if it's ramped up gradually, or if the 15% cut number is only in situations where things are looking very dire heading into the winter, then maybe the economic pain for households and businesses in Europe won't be as bad. But anytime you're talking about energy rationing and cutting off energy supply or energy demand, that makes things very challenging for the next few months heading into winter.
And do you think it will effectively reduce Europe's dependence on Russia?
You know, on the margin, it will. It really depends what happens with Nord Stream 1. If Russia continues to manipulate energy markets for political purposes and runs Nord Stream 1, at 20% capacity or even a little higher than that, that's what's going to make things very challenging, and there's going to be some demand response that's needed because of the lack of supply. So I think what this is attempting to do is ensure that in a worst case scenario where Russia really cuts off supplies to Europe, that they make the choices necessary to be in a better situation where natural gas inventories are still relatively high in the winter. So in the near term, it probably won't reduce dependence on Russian gas all that much. I think the long-term play is still very much needed in terms of getting more American liquefied natural gas exports, building more renewable power, building more nuclear power. That energy diversification in the intermediate term is certainly going to be necessary. But this is a critical step that's needed to be taken looking at natural gas inventories heading into the winter.
Gazprom is further reducing the flow of gas through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. What could this really mean for winter?
Yeah, I think that's the big concern and the big challenge, and again speaks to Europe's need to rid themselves of Russian dependence. This is extends beyond what Russia and Putin has done with Ukraine, and is really affecting the rest of Europe and leading to this energy crunch. And Europe was already making a number of difficult decisions leading up to the winter months to build up natural gas inventories. If Russia continues a sustained lower supply of natural gas through Nord Stream 1 operating at very low capacities, it's going to make it very difficult to build up those inventories heading into the winter to make sure there isn't an energy crunch in the winter months, which can be fatal, quite literally, for Europeans. That's when you see loss of life. That's when you see energy poverty really at its worst, when people are in need of heat in cold winter months. That's why Europe is really committed as an entire continent to take the measures necessary to energy ration now in a way that will hopefully protect them in the winter months.
The German parliament recently voted to restart many of their coal-fired power plants. Do you think that will protect them?
Yeah, I think it's a necessary step. Regrettably, Germany took the steps of decommissioning their nuclear power plants, which would have provided affordable, clean electricity and would have helped the continent and their country meet their climate targets while also, staving off some of the dependence that the country has seen on Russia. And now it is really kind of an all hands on deck for energy supplies. So I think it's certainly sensible and reasonable for Germany to restart its coal-fired power plants because they're going to need all the energy supplies that they can get. And the more that they can divert that coal-fired electricity and displace that with natural gas, that can help build up the natural gas inventories that can be used in the winter months. So it will certainly help. I think restarting any type of power generation is going to help in the next few months and again leading up to the winter. But at the same time, it really shows the folly of what Germany and some other countries have done in terms of turning their back on emissions-free nuclear power. And now they're in this situation where it's going to be very difficult to meet their climate targets and their energy needs by restarting their coal-fired power plants.
And looking at Europe as a whole, what should they do to prepare for winter and for the long term?
Yeah, I think the more they can streamline permitting processes to build more energy infrastructure as quickly as possible, that could be everything from electric heat pumps to more liquefied natural gas import terminals so they can import more natural gas from places like the United States and like Qatar and Australia. That is something that should be a priority, not just if it can help in the winter months, because that's going to be very difficult to do in the next few months, but it can really make a difference in the next few years. And so these decisions about energy rationing in the near term is going to be very challenging. There may be some sort of conservation efforts that households and businesses can do to build up those inventories. But Europe as a whole should be committed to an efficient regulatory and permitting process to get as much energy infrastructure as possible built in a way that fully rids their dependence on Russian energy supplies. That's ultimately what's going to help them not only avoid any type of energy shortage and energy poverty and energy security crisis, but will help with the diversification that is necessary to get off Russian gas once and for all.
Nick Loris from C3 Solutions, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again for having me.